to another episode of the Screen Addicts Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Slasher Steven Sosa, and unfortunately, Chris will not be able to attend this podcast. And no, don't worry, he wasn't hunted down by some homicidal maniac. He's not in one of Jigsaw's traps or anything. He's safe and sound, just dealing with personal matters. But he will be here next week with a guest of his own, and which we will probably preview at the end of this episode. But in the meantime, I happen to have two amazing guests joining me in his place, and we will be talking about all things Giallo, Italian and American Giallo films, and we'll get into a brief description about that later on when we do that. But allow me to introduce the co-hosts of the Dead Body Bathtub Podcast. So please, Mazzanti, take it away from here.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for having us on. We're really stoked to be here. Yeah, I'm Mike, or Mazzanti. We've been doing the Dead Body Bathtub for a couple months now. We just love hardcore horror and want to share that with the world. Also, Germaine is a lot more hardcore than me, so she picks really nasty stuff, and then I try to suffer through it, and then I'm like, what about this old Italian movie? So you can come check us out on the Dead Body Bathtub. We're covering all kinds of stuff, and we are thrilled to be on the podcast. Love Giallo, love talking about it, love spreading the Italian love. Germaine, I don't know if you have anything.
Hello, I am Germaine Shock.
Perfect, nailed it.
Yes, nailed it. I a lover of all things horror, spooky, macabre, nasty, as he said. All the things, and yeah, just really glad to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you too. And of course, in typical Screen Addicts podcast fashion, we like to hear about what our guests have been watching recently. So, Mazzanti, if there's anything you want to share that you've been recently watching?
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of post 9/11 American horror, which is kind of like a period no one really cares about, no one really talks about, gives a shit about. I love it. So Texas Chainsaw remakes, all that stuff. I've been working on a project related to that, so I've been kind of diving back into those movies. I also watched Peeping Tom recently, the 1960 Michael Powell movie. Highly recommend that movie if anyone hasn't seen it. I also watched Island of the Lost, which is a 1932 movie with Bela Lugosi that is an adaptation of an H.G. Wells novel called The Island of Dr. Moreau, which is a quite famous one. And then I watched Cannibal Ferox finally for the first time recently.
Yes.
Umberto Lenzi's movie, also known as Make Them Die Slowly, which is a much better name. And I absolutely adored that movie. I think it's spectacular. So the Italian cannibal scene is my number one thing. So I'm huge fan of that, and I was happy to dive into that.
Sounds delicious. And I will say, though, that right off the bat, just with your recently watched, I know that I have asked the perfect people to come onto this particular episode, because I can guarantee you half of our listeners will have no idea who the hell or what the hell any of those movies were. So even I was like, Peeping Tom, damn, that is an old school movie. I haven't thought about that movie in a long time, but you know what? Now I kind of want to go back and rewatch it. So that's incredible list of I haven't watched. I need to go and kind of fashion my recently watched, not sound so square after that one. That's pretty damn good stuff. Okay, Peeping Tom, is that streaming on anything, or do you have a copy of it?
Oh gosh, I think it might be on Tubi. We've discovered through the podcast, every movie is on Tubi. It's unreal.
Everything.
Yes,
every movie is on Tubi. I think I also watched Cannibal Ferox on there. They are, and it's just there's a couple ads sprinkled throughout, which kind of sucks sometimes. You'll be in the middle of a really intense scene, and it's do your sheets smell like shit? And so it kind of ruins the vibe a little bit. But I believe Peeping Tom is on Tubi, and it's a tremendous movie. I really loved it.
It was funny because Chris was asking me, he's like, I really want to get into Giallo as it is, and he was like, where can I, or what's a movie that you would recommend? So I recommended him a couple, and he's like, dude, these are literally all on Tubi right now. You could have just said Tubi and just that's it.
Type Italy, yeah.
And it's funny about Tubi is that it isn't just subversive stuff. They even have mainstream things on there now. So anybody that wants to watch pretty much anything, you can find it on Tubi. And the funny thing about Tubi is people are sharing, reels and TikToks about just these random ass Tubi movies that are so crazy and goofy. And I mean, yeah, I was like, I don't know what the hell that is, but I want to watch it now just because I like weird and dumb shit like that.
Yes.
But
yes.
yeah, okay. So I'm definitely gonna rewatch Peeping Tom. I haven't seen that in such a long time. That man, that's a good one.
Yeah,
So,
it was a lot more grungy than I thought too. Like a lot nastier than I expected it to be. Just it being like Michael Powell and being the '60s, but I was very impressed with it.
You know, it's funny about like the 60s and 70s. You know, people will see something like Halloween and they think that it's groundbreaking in terms of violence or terror. And I'm thinking, no, I don't think so, man. You got to go back a decade and definitely with foreign films, you know, kind of like what we'll talk about later. But I mean, there's some really grimy, grisly stuff if that's your personal forte. And so, Germaine, what have you been watching this last week or whatever?
So I have actually gone the opposite route. I have a lot of blind spots with like mainstream kind of popular horror movies. And so I watched The Conjuring for the first time.
No
I've
shit.
never seen it. Yeah. And I watched Return of the Living Dead and Happy Death Day.
Okay.
Somehow
and
haven't
Last
caught that one
Shift.
yet. Yeah. Oh, The Last Shift.
Last Shift.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what did you, I mean,
watch? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, what did you think of, I mean, to start, like, what did you think of The Conjuring? Because that's kind of surprising that you hadn't seen that one.
I'm surprised too.
Oh, no. Okay. Well.
Did it spook you out?
No.
Oh, come on, Germaine. God damn it. This
Listen,
is why,
I'm
this
kind
is
of
the
the
whole
naysayer.
podcast. This
I
is
know.
our podcast. It's
I
just
know
Germaine
it.
going, that's not scary, Mike. And I'm like, what about the angle of the camera?
Yeah, that's the thing. I didn't love it. It was okay. It was fine. I really liked Ed and Lorraine. I liked their characters. But as a whole,
yeah.
I don't know if it was maybe because the movie had been hyped up so much and there was so much
fair.
surrounding it and I had never seen it. And so maybe I just my expectations were too high. But I wasn't feeling it. I was a little bored. It just didn't.
Even with
hit.
your starkly religious upbringing and your fear of shadows, I'm startled that you didn't. I'm startled.
Yeah, and that is one of the things. I do find it hard to enjoy like movies where people become like possessed or taken over by people. I just feel like I don't know. It's the same thing every time for me. And so for this, there weren't any elements to me that just really stood out as like, I'm scared or, oh, this looks really good. So I was kind of disappointed. And I know that that's not a popular opinion, but it wasn't my favorite. But Return of the Living Dead, you guys, I can't believe that I haven't seen that before now. That movie, fucking incredible, lives up to the hype. Amazing.
That got
highly
the
recommend.
coveted Germaine Shock 5 stars on Letterboxd, which is
It did.
like it's like getting hit by lightning. You're gonna see one of those every it's like the unicorn of Germaine ratings. So I was shocked. I was shocked by that.
Are you gonna watch Return of the Living Dead Part 2?
I don't know.
I mean, I think you kind of have to. It's
kind of have to.
It's a weird sequel, but yeah, that first one, that's a staple in our house. Like we'll watch that one every other year. It is good. The visual, not the visual effects, the special effects. I mean, it's so pulpy, good stuff. And yeah, I think I'll fire that one up after Peeping Tom tonight.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm glad that it's so funny because about The Conjuring, I like how you had a different perspective on it because that's how I feel about like demon and devil possession movies. I think that when you see one, like for example, I had mentioned in a couple episodes ago that I had watched The Pope's Exorcist with Russell Crowe, right? And I was like, okay, so somebody's possessed. You send a priest in there to exorcise the demon. There's some kind of personal family drama or dynamic that's overwhelming. And it's the same shit every single time.
Yeah.
And then it even turns into like Constantine by the end of it because he's got all these like special cross weapons. I was like, what priest has this? This is crazy. So I kind of feel like with that, like, because The Exorcist Believer had come out. We still haven't seen it yet. But I think as far as... demon or demonic possession, I think it's okay with The Exorcist to take familiar routes because it kind of set the standard from a mainstream standpoint. So it's okay to rehash certain elements of that. I mean, they even brought Ellen Burstyn back in from the original. And I think that that's okay. But like I said, there was one like Pray for the Devil where the female nun was going in and she was trying to learn how to be an exorcist. I'm like, oh, this seems like an interesting perspective. Maybe they'll dive into something from a feminine standpoint, which they kind of do until she has to go and exorcise the demon. And I'm like, okay, now it's the same shit. So I don't know, but that is a refreshing take. I personally think The Conjuring is fine. I didn't like think it was great. I thought part 2 was a lot better than the first one, but I remembered when the first one had come, I guess it's 10 years in 2013 already. It's celebrating its 10th anniversary.
Wild.
And that's crazy.
I remembered when James 1 had released that, I said, oh, this is going to be great, because I loved Insidious. Like, I really...
I did too. I really liked Insidious.
Now, that was a movie that I was just totally into. I was in a theater in New Jersey watching it by myself on like a 9:30 showing. I'm like, what the hell have I done? And I don't get scared about anything, but there was shit in that movie that I was like... You know, you have to do the look behind, you know, to make sure nobody else is like sitting behind you.
The first like 45 minutes of that movie have that exact atmosphere. Like before shit really ramps up in Insidious, it's so unsettling. That's the shit that, and I think that's what works for me about The Conjuring is the more so the subtler, unsettling stuff. Like to me, the thing that James Wan, like the reason I'm a huge James Wan fan, and I think he's a good craftsman. So that's why I think Germaine, it doesn't work for you as much, is because I'm more so just looking at like the way he fashions a movie, and I think he has like a bit of a passion for the craft of filmmaking in a way that I find a lot of horror, like modern horror directors, they seem like they don't actually like horror. They just like, they want to make an A24 movie where someone like looks at the camera and then like the camera rotates and then they're like, it wasn't that scary. And so like, I think he just like really actually gives a shit about the genre. And like, I'm a huge Malignant fan. Like,
oh my God, I was just about to ask you too, what you thought of Malignant.
For that movie every day. I love it.
I'm not into it.
It is. I remembered my wife and I were watching it, and she was kind of into it until like the final scene when it turned into some kind of crazy superhero demon. I was like, no, that
exactly.
I thought that was cool. And then I'm like, but it, you know, that is a very divisive movie too. Like, whereas it seems like the overwhelming population enjoyed The Conjuring. Like, I remember when Malignant came out, it was just split down the middle with that. Either you really loved it, or you were just like, no, that was fucking stupid. You know what?
Yes.
Why is this happening? How is it in her head? Like, that's the craziest tumor I've ever seen in my life. But I don't know. I also like Annabelle Wallis too. So maybe I'm like biased and I'm like, oh, she's got brunette hair in this one. And then, but maybe I was a little bit biased in that sense, but I thought it was good. The Pixies Where's My Mind remake that they did for that, I thought, because they fashioned it into the score, which I was like, I kind of like that. I don't know. But again, my wife she should really, I was just telling you before we recorded, like, Sonia needs to come back on this podcast.
Yeah.
Back on.
We're going to have to bring
absolutely.
her on. But, because I'm always talking about her as if she's here, because her insights are so good. So when she hears this, she's like, oh my God, you're talking about me coming on that damn show again. I'm like, yeah, and I won't stop until you come back. But okay, so, and what else did you say you saw? Oh, Happy Death Day. What did you think of that one?
I actually liked that one. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was entertaining.
Happy Death Day 2, the sequel, goes into some crazy, like, sci-fi stuff. And I thought it was fine, but it definitely doesn't fit the mold of what the first one was. Like, the first one's like Groundhog Day from Hell or something,
Yeah.
But
right.
That's cool. Man, yeah, I see, again, both of you had two completely different realms of your recently watched. Like, that's pretty incredible stuff. So I guess what I watched this last week, and I started Reptile on Netflix, the Benicio del Toro movie. I don't know. I was a little bit underwhelmed by that. I didn't know.
That's what I heard.
What to expect. I thought, oh, okay, Benicio del Toro. This could be good. Alicia Silverstone was in that, which I absolutely loved. I do too.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you not love Alicia Silverstone?
Yeah.
And
it had a good trailer too. Like, it had an interesting trailer.
Yes, and I think that was the most interesting thing about it, because when it was all said and done, I'm like, that's it? Like, there was no real twist, nothing. This is kind of substandard stuff. And I kept thinking about was them in Excess Baggage together, that 1999 movie where she's faking her own kidnapping, and he's like a thief, and they end up, it's just typical 90s like romance shit. And it was like a life less ordinary but not as good. But I still like that movie, so I was like, fuck this, we should have just watched Access Baggage again, because I had a lot more fun with that. But I was trying to think of the last time Alicia Silverstone was in a movie, because it seems like it's been a really long time since she's been in like a main like starring role like that. And
I can't even think of the last time I've seen her in something something new coming out.
But yeah, I loved her, and I mean I still do, so it's great that she's back in there in the forefront of things. But and Del Toro, I've always liked his work. He's always really awesome. Solid. But like I said, from a horror thriller standpoint, like Reptile did not deliver in that regard, so that was kind of a disappointment.
So disappointing.
But one that I did see that absolutely delivered, and I actually had to wait and listen to your two podcasts, because it was Saw X. Or do you say Saw 10? You say Saw 10 or Saw X? I don't even know.
think Saw X.
I like Saw X better.
Just sounds cooler, even though it is 10, but like X,
Yeah.
It's kind of like when Jason X came out. Jason X came out. I was like, I don't think people are saying Jason 10. I think they're literally saying Jason X, and it just kind of stuck like that. But so Saw X, we'll set the standard right now. It's Saw X. You say 10, we won't know what the hell you're talking about.
That's right. Which one's that?
Saw X comes out. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm being not necessarily a snob about it. I've watched all of them. They keep making them. I'm going to go watch them. I don't care. And so I go and I watch this, and I said, okay, for starters, Tobin Bell's the main character in this one. I'm like, well, yeah, they shouldn't have killed him off so fast in the franchise, because everything else that you make post 3 is going to be prequel or something pertaining to his past. So there's no real stakes to it. And I thought, okay, so this is his most personal game, and it deals with his medical situation. And so there is a bit of fraud there. Well, there's a lot of fraud. Like they really
there's a lot.
So I was watching this. I'm like, okay, so I don't like spoilers, and I don't talk about them, so I don't try to look up things online. But I was curious to see what the timeline was, because I know that Shawnee Smith was returning. So I was like, okay, well, it has to be before 3. So apparently it falls in between 2 and 3, because well, I don't know, maybe it's before 2. I think it's actually before wondering. 2, because
it's between 1 and 2.
Yes, so because she's still on the fence to whether or not she fully believes, or if she wants to fully commit to this notion of what he's trying to present. So yeah, I think it is between 1 and 2. So I go and I'm watching it, and I have to tell you, I loved it. I thought it was so good. Somebody actually said it's the Logan of the Saw series, and I'm like,
that's
damn,
me.
Yeah, maybe it was you. I did listen. It was after the fact. I was like, okay, so shout out to you and your awesome show. And I was listening to that, and I said, damn it, that is 100% true. Because like I said, I didn't want to listen to your show, because I know you two get into
spoil the shit out of it,
which is great, because that's what you do. You want to go watch these movies and feel like you're having a conversation with you about it. You're getting the insights of everything. And so yeah, I watched it, and I thought, damn. So then I saw the show, and when you said Logan for the Saw series, I was like, yeah, that's 100% true. I didn't even think about that, but that is 100% true. And the acting in it, like you said, it was so good. I thought, man, he's
crazy,
really stretching his wings here. And
killing it.
I've always loved Shawnee Smith. I have had a crush on her since she was in The Blob, like summer school.
I forgot about that.
Like old school Shawnee Smith. And even in Becker with Ted Danson, I'm like, I love Shawnee Smith. Like I've always liked her. So the fact that she was coming back to the franchise, I was like, well, this proves a couple of things. It proves that Amanda is also just a viable character to the franchise and a fan favorite. And the dynamic between the two is so good, because what's great about their performances in these Saw movies when they're together are they're so different from each one. Like in Saw, she's the victim. He's Jigsaw. Part 2, she's, his apprentice or disciple. And then this one, I guess in 3, she's also his disciple. But in this one, she's still kind of like, should I commit to this? Should I commit to what he's doing? And then, as it comes out to reveal, it's what happens. And I just, man, you really tend to I've never rooted for Jigsaw so much in
I
a Saw
know.
movie before.
Yes.
Because
It's
it's
crazy.
They fashioned him
Exactly.
and her to be like an anti-hero in this movie.
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
they're
100%.
still fucking people up. It's not cool. You know, like I'm wearing my Dexter. I'm wearing a shirt. It's
Ooh.
Dexter, but it's a Maniac
Love
from the
Dexter.
movie Maniac. It's
Oh, yes.
Dexter inspired.
Nice.
And so I'm thinking, you know, I love Dexter and you know, Dexter's, that was his code. I'm only going to kill bad
Mhm.
people. So it's just
Yeah.
kind of
Right.
like, I guess Jigsaw kind of had that mentality, you know, people that
Yeah.
were doing wrong. So it's like, okay, well then we're cool with this. And, but the, you know, and again, like the kills in this one were just gruesome. And
Some
I was
gnarly
saying,
shit.
you have to step up with these Saw movies because you've pretty much seen it all, or so you think you've
Yeah.
seen it all.
Mhm.
And man, I have to agree. I can't remember which one of you two said the wire leg cutting scene.
Oh,
That was
Mm.
so gnarly. And I
gnarly.
thought,
It
this
was
is
gnarly.
this is terrible. And the brain thing, I don't know, it gets to become too comical in a sense to
Right,
to
it's
take it
so
so
over the top.
seriously. But like
Mhm.
someone wiring their leg off, it's just okay,
Yes.
that shit was messed up.
It's like just believable enough that
So
you
good.
can like feel it. You know, the
Right.
brain stuff like
Yeah.
goes so far that I'm like, I can't, like I'm detached from this like emotionally, but like you feel that leg saw so hard, and it's
Yeah.
it's
But,
it's awful.
So yeah, I definitely recommend Saw X if you're a fan of the franchise. I think you're going to be really impressed by that movie. And like I said, the 10th one in the series, it's just, and I like
Yeah.
Spiral,
Crazy.
you know, with Chris
Yeah.
Rock. I thought
Me too.
Spiral was really well done, and
Me too.
a lot of people didn't give it a chance just because, you know, it seemed like it, you know, went so far outside of what the Saw series was. But I thought it
Yep.
tied it kind of in nicely. And of course, there's some cameos with Saw X. Nothing great or nothing like
Yep.
too groundbreaking or anything. But if you're a fan of the series, you're gonna recognize somebody at the mid credits. Y'all saw the mid credits scene, right?
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, my theater was like, oh shit.
Yeah, that was good. It was funny because I stayed only because the actor Michael Beach, Michael Boatman, Michael Beach, the guy that sets him up, the one that says he has cancer.
Oh,
And
yeah, okay, yeah.
He's been in stuff for decades. Like there's
Yes.
I don't know if y'all remember Lean on Me with Morgan Freeman
Yeah.
from 1989. Well, he's the gym teacher and football coach
That's right.
always at odds with him. And I thought, man, this
Yes.
guy's good. So every time he shows up in something, I'm like, oh, he's gonna flip Morgan Freeman's desk. I'm just waiting. And he didn't flip shit and Saw because it was on the opposite end of that. So that was but that was really good. I was gonna start Fall in the House of Usher, but I haven't gotten around to that one yet. That's another
Me too.
TV series that I actually will watch. I was mentioning I
Yeah.
prefer movies. Mike Flanagan seems to have a pretty good niche of horror series on Netflix right now. I enjoyed The Haunting of Hill House. You know, I never saw The Haunting of Bly Manor though.
I didn't either.
I haven't seen either, which is like it's talking about like filling modern blind spots. Like I have not seen that.
Yeah.
Everyone tells me to watch. Like there were non-horror people watching Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah.
Like it was just such a sensation when it came out.
Yes,
but
that's true.
Midnight Mass.
Yes.
I fucking sorry, can we curse on the show? Is it cool? Is it just making sure it's fine to curse? Or
Fuck yeah. Sorry, Mom.
yeah, I thought Midnight Mass was just like exceptional.
Yeah.
So I love those like 10 to 8 to 10 episode, like there is an ending in sight
Yeah.
type of shows, because then I feel like you can have those arcs and those like satisfying conclusions, and he does just a great job of that.
Yeah, because I believe that Usher is also that's a one-off, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
kind
I
of like
believe
you
it
said. That's his standard for things. Is just
Awesome.
You know, and Midnight Mass was really good. And as far as like vampire stories go, I thought that it was pretty good in that.
Yeah,
regard.
it was. Very unique.
I was kind of blown away by it, and I thought it really, really thoughtfully engaged with vampirism as like an idea. Like you were talking, just what you were talking about with like The Conjuring, like all the possession movies being the same. I thought it like had something interesting to say about the concept of vampirism and the kind of like intersections with religion and how so much of that is like subjective. Like the way they kind of convince you that the fear of this thing doesn't necessarily make it bad, because there's so much stuff about like the fear of God, the awe of God, and they like play that narrative into the vampires. And I was like, oh shit, that's actually like really compelling and interesting. You know, like you don't really know why Renfield is helping Dracula. You're like, dude, what are you getting out of this? This man is not helping you. So I thought it was really interesting the way they kind of like wove those two things together.
I know why Renfield's helping Nick Cage, because he's the man for starters.
Yeah, that's right. If it's the Nick Cage version, I get it. You know?
All the other ones, you're like, what the hell are you doing, man?
If it's Klaus Kinski, you're like, what the fuck are you doing with this guy?
What a killjoy.
This guy's not fun to be around.
Okay, let me ask. So I'm also watching. I noticed that the season 3 release of Chucky was coming out. So
interesting.
I totally forgot about season 2 for some stupid reason, because season 1 of Chucky was great, and I binge watched. Okay. Oh, the whole show is so good. And
cool.
I was surprised because there are a lot of F-bombs, and the gore in these shows are hard R-rated stuff. So I actually had to go and look and see when its original airtime was. It is on the USA Network and streams on Peacock. But I'm like, USA can show this stuff now? Like, that's crazy. Because I remember like 15 years ago how big of a deal it was that somebody dropped an F-bomb on Breaking Bad or Sons of Anarchy. And that was only like close to 10 o'clock on, you know, a weeknight or a weekend night. So, but now it's like, I thought, oh man, they're making a Chucky TV series. They're going to desensitize the character and kind of bastardize the fun that he is. Because part of his fun,
he's so crass.
Is his dialogue. And that was another thing. Because, you know, there are a lot of things that offend people from a mainstream setting. So I thought, man, are they going to relent and kind of, no, hell no. Chucky is still 100% Chucky. And the kills in this show are so creative. And I thought, okay, well, now I'll continue watching the show. And what's even more impressive about it,
that's awesome,
is that the continuity from Child's Play 1 is still heavily intact in this series. So it carries over from Child's Play to like Cult of Chucky to Curse of Chucky, like those more recent movies that had come out. So it's I highly recommend Chucky the series, because even if you're not a fan of it so much, it's still funny as hell. And you know, it deals from the perspective of these younger kids, like almost like Stranger Things, kind of like playing in the younger trope of like the Goonies trope type of a deal.
Right.
And I thought that they were pretty compelling little actors too. Little actors, like they're diminutive. They were compelling. See, I might have said something offensive to say, but they're good actors.
Look at you, little guys.
Good job, little fella. But you know, they're really good, and I highly recommend Chucky. And I mean, I wouldn't even I would go so far as to say you might want to rewatch all of them, because they tie into every single one of them. And even what's his name? Andy, the guy that plays Andy, the little boy from part 1, is also a main character in the new series. Like, I'm telling you, I think, and I looked it up, that Don Mancini, who originally wrote Child's Play, he wrote all of the movies, and he even directed the last 2 or maybe 3, starting from Seed of Chucky. And they gave him full autonomy of the product. So he's the showrunner. He writes every script. I think he directs most of them. So I think in doing so, that's really kept the character intact. And even Seed of Chucky, which wasn't my favorite, they even integrate his kids that they have. I mean, I was just like, damn, not to like spoil too much of it, but I'm like, this show is so much more brilliant than I ever anticipated it to be. So maybe going in with lower standards was probably something that that helped out a little bit. But okay, and I think that was it. Now we're just kind of in our Halloween rewatches. You know, me and my wife, we watch horror movies all year. Like, she's a huge horror fan. We watch horror movies all year, but there's something about the Halloween season that just really ramps things up a bit, you know, and,
for sure.
and as you approach Devil's Night. And you know, we have a lot of friends and family that will actually ask either one of us, like, hey, what are some good Halloween movies to watch? Because we know you guys watch a whole bunch of them throughout the whole year. So you know, there's just a bunch of mainstays like Fright Night, The original
yeah.
and even the remake. I thought the remake was pretty good. I'm a big Colin Farrell fan. It sounds funny because people are always like, Colin Farrell from SWAT. I'm like, no, not Colin Farrell from SWAT.
No.
I'm talking about Ondine, the Lobster, in Bruges, Colin Farrell. And they're like, what are those movies? I'm like, well, that's why you don't like Colin Farrell for starters. But him playing as in Fright Night, I thought he was good, but I mean,
He's
Jerry
awesome.
Dandridge, Chris Sarandon, he's just, that first Fright Night movie is just such a great movie, and the visual effects hold up so well. And I read a tidbit that I was like, man, who did the visual effects for this movie? Because they are so great. And apparently, Ghostbusters 2 was on a production stall, so they had to do some work. They were like, well, we need some work while we figure out what's going on with Ghostbusters 2. And they said, Tom Holland, the director of Child's Play, is working on this vampire movie. If you want to help him. They're like, yeah, why the hell not? And then they ended up using, and then Tom Holland's like, do you mind if the people that worked on Ghostbusters work on my movie? No, please excuse them from the building. Of course he did.
If I have to.
Yeah. And I was like, God, the effects in this movie are so masterclass. And I still, to this day, if a movie is using practical effects, I will take practical over CGI. And it's like blood, gore, and I don't know if y'all had heard last week's episode. We talked a lot about the Hatchet series because they specialized in SFX because it's all blood, it's all handmade, and it looks fantastic. And you know what? Some of the gore, like dismemberments, stuff like that, when it's a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? Like over exaggerated. Even that's good sometimes because that's part of the charm of some of these movies. Like if blood's splattering all over the place like a faucet, you're like, well, yeah, that's kind of what would that really happen? I mean, I don't know. I don't really care to know if it really would happen, but if it does in a movie, I certainly don't mind. But yeah, so I mean, is there anything else that y'all wanted to share? Any other? Oh, you know what? Actually, now that I'm like wanting to pick your brains, not literally, of course, but I was wondering, so what was it for each of you that really got you? What was the movie or movies that really got you into the horror genre as it was? Like, what was it that really pulled you in that said, you know what, this is my genre, this is my tent pole that I'm going to sit under?
Good question.
I know
mean,
I'm putting you on the spot. It's kind of loaded.
No, not at all.
But I'm just so excited to have you on that. And, Chris is like, stop geeking out over everybody, man. I'm like, well, they're on for a reason because I am a big fan of their show. So Chris is still in my ear. I can hear him. Like, you talk too much. Just shut up and let him talk.
Go.
But, I
appreciate it.
Mazzanti, so what is it? What do you think that movie was for you?
Well, I remember the first thing, like Scooby-Doo as a show was like, it's just like that got me into horror in a big way of just like enjoying being scared. And my birthday is near Halloween, so I was always enjoying that kind of season.
Oh, lucky.
I remember my sisters renting the Gremlins and that like fucking me up, like really like terrified me. Like to this day, I haven't rewatched it because I've seen it probably like 100 times, but I always would like be like, don't put him in the blender. Like I have these images in my head that are probably not even from the movie anymore that I just like over the years, it's been like mythologized so intensely.
Right.
But then like jumping ahead, my dad and I used to go to the movies every single Friday together. And the movie that I remember, the first R-rated horror movie that I saw in theaters was 30 Days of Night. The vampire movie, which I'm actually a big fan of. I really like that movie. And I think it was at that point, like I already loved horror at that point, but seeing something that I was like, oh, this is like an adult movie, like it's R, and like I'm going to see it. That really stuck with me, and it was intense for me when I was, I was probably 15 or something. But I just remembered being like, I just want to live in this movie. Like I just want to live in this world. It looks miserable, but like I just want to be hiding in one of these attics with these people. That's probably just because it was Josh Hartnett, and I was like, hello. But anyway, I do. It's like, hello, Josh. But that was the first one that kind of that really just I was like, oh, okay, I think I'm going to do this forever. What about you, Germaine?
Yep.
Yeah. So a couple of things for me. So my parents had The Serpent and the Rainbow.
Oh,
It's
nice.
recorded on VHS when I was a kid, and it was like recorded with something else that like we would watch regularly. I don't remember what it was, but it was one of those things where they were like, absolutely not, do not watch this. You are not allowed to watch this. But I would catch like snippets of it here and there. And so I would like, peek in. And so that set the stage for the whole like, oh, this is forbidden. There's that element of this isn't allowed, kind of a thing. It made it very mysterious. Made me want to know what was going on in there. Which actually I did watch. I had never watched all of this whole time, my entire adult life. I kept to that. Do not watch this movie. I watched it for the first time like a week or two ago. I spoiled it. I spoiled it for myself. Yeah.
Didn't give it a very good star rating, Germaine.
I didn't.
Yep.
I'm
Let
not
your
a
childhood
huge.
self down.
Listen, I'm not a huge. I'm gonna get.
You say
as
you're not a huge
say,
Wes
I'm-
Craven fan. So
As you're gonna say, I'm gonna get ratioed. I'm not a huge Wes Craven fan.
See, that's on it. Yeah, that's
Oh
I
my.
know, but
that's
I
unacceptable.
know,
That's
I
like
know.
Hot take.
it's a
It
sacrilege.
is.
Okay,
It really
this is
is.
from the woman. She gave
He's too
Texas
silly.
Chainsaw Massacre 3 stars. So
But
this is why
3
we have
isn't
a problem.
bad. But
Three's
listen,
good.
3 isn't bad in my eyes. 1 and 2 is bad in my eyes. For me, 3 is like I would watch it again. I appreciate it, or it's nostalgic.
I
But it's not
hear
bad.
Dennis from Always Sunny going, "I'm a 5-star man." And when you're talking about Texas Chainsaw, that is like it's just a sacred text to me. So it's hard to.
I get
It's like
it.
someone being
I
like,
get it.
you're super religious. Like, I read the Bible. It's aight. I like
Eh.
Harry Potter more. It's kind of like, well, wait a minute. It means
That's how I
something.
feel.
It's interesting that I actually admire the holdout, because if my parents ever told me not to watch something, the first damn thing I'm doing is watching it. like my mom's gonna hide Pretty Woman from me. Okay, that's not happening. I'm like, why can't I watch this? I'm gonna figure out why. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like 8 years old. I'm like, okay, I
Yeah.
get it now. I don't know exactly the mechanics of what's going on, but I know that that's not good. So Serpent and the Rainbow didn't hold up, huh?
It didn't. I love Bill Pullman. I liked the idea. I liked the concept of it. It wasn't a bad movie by any means. It didn't hold up, to what I had in my brain as being this. You can't watch it.
There were a lot of production issues with that movie
Yep.
too. Like if you go
That's
into a
right.
deep dive of The Serpent and the Rainbow, there was some crazy shit. I think probably crazier stuff. I think a documentary of the making of that movie would probably be more compelling than the movie itself.
Oh.
Because Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
No, I
sorry.
was just saying, like, I'm not a fan of that movie either. I think it's fine. I think that there are better Wes Craven movies, especially around the late 80s and early 90s. Like, I love The People Under the Stairs. Like, I think
I
that
do
that's what I was
actually love
about to
that
shout.
one.
That
Yeah.
movie
one is
rocks.
I think that
Love
one
that.
was, one that's kind of trash that I still really enjoy is Shocker. And
Never seen it.
that was it's on Peacock right now. I saw that it was on there. I'm like, should I rewatch Shocker? I'm like, no, because if it's worse now than it was back then, I don't want to taint the legacy of this prestigious film because I know it wasn't that great to begin with. But yeah, it just depends on. And as far as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that was actually the one that introduced me to horror. That's the one that I saw for the first time, because like you, I found it on a tape, and my dad, he's a big film buff, so I got a lot of movie watching from him, and I loved asking him about, how were audiences in the 73 screening of The Exorcist, and he's like, oh man, people were getting up, they were leaving, they said that they were going to be cursed, they were praying on their way out, literally. And, I was like, okay, that's what I'm talking about. But then he also said about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, he said that when people saw it for the first time, they too were leaving the theaters because they thought it was real. They said, no, this is something that how it's shot, that documentary style, that low grade camera quality. And so it's like, what is it like? What's the film ratio? It's like 16 millimeter to 32.
Yeah,
print.
it's like 16 millimeter,
and
super grungy.
Like
yeah.
really grimy stuff. And it looks great, from a technical sense. Like that one really solidified a lot of things. So of course he had that on tape, and he had like Friday the 13th Part 5 randomly recorded on this tape. And I'm just like, so I watched everything on the tape, and of course, and Pet Sematary was also on there. So I'm watching these movies. Friday the 13th Part 5 didn't make any sense to me because I didn't know like
So,
what is going
this
on.
guy?
And I'm like, oh, and I always thought Roy was the killer in the Friday the 13th movies rather than Jason. So they're like, oh, you got to watch the first 4. Like, Jason's crazy. I'm like, who's Jason? I thought Roy was the killer. They're like, no, he's like the fake stand-in. I'm like, so where's Jason? I'm like, he dies in Part 4. I'm like, what? Like, that sucks. So then, yeah, I was working backwards from the Friday the 13th series, but that tape, I should just say that entire tape is what got me into the horror genre as a whole. I watch everything. Like, there isn't a genre that I discriminate against. I literally watch everything made. There's nothing that I mean, there are some things that I don't like, but I can always pick the best things out in a movie. The horror genre, there's some clunkers, but I can still find something that I really appreciated about them. And
definitely,
I guess that kind of leads us into the main topic. Like, Giallo is a particular subgenre of horror that I don't think a lot of people know, especially from the mainstream. Like, a lot of mainstream audiences won't know what this type of film is. Basically, Giallo comes from the old Italian novels that had the yellow covers. They were mystery suspense novels, and Giallo is yellow in Italian, if I'm not mistaken. So that gets that its original name from it. But these movies that were being released were inspired by these novels, but they kind of flipped them on their ends. They made them really gory. Like, there's a lot of things that make a Giallo film, and there's a certain quality to them, whether it's a particular camera style or really, really gory kills or twist endings that sometimes are over the top, sometimes they're kind of underwhelming, but yet they always try to surprise you with it. So that's something that we were going to talk about. And so, Mazzanti, what is your idea of Giallo? Like, what do you feel about this franchise or this genre?
Yeah, I love Giallo so much. I think I like predominantly learned about them from just like listening to Eli Roth and Quentin Tarantino and stuff, just like geek out about them, just over and over again, on the History of Horror podcast, which is awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and but so I started kind of diving into them and just really fell in love with Fulci was like the first person that I really just fell in love with. I'm rocking the New York Ripper hat, but I started to just dive more and more into the genre, and what really just caught me was how amazing the filmmaking is. And I think when people, especially if you're talking about from like a mainstream entry point, I think if someone sees the dubbing and the way it's not always synced up with the audio, and they just see these kind of crazy camera angles and these crazy colors, and everything's kind of like, it's a lot of like psychoanalysis, like id based filmmaking with lots of like hypersexual strange stuff going on. I could see how it can be kind of off-putting for people, but there is such just a rich, there's a giant catalog of them, which like it's like there's a million Giallos out there, which is fantastic. Like, there's always another one to discover. And I just think it's a really exciting genre, and I find that it kind of ticks all the boxes for me in the sense that it's got the amazing gore, it's also got this really expressive, really interesting filmmaking. There can be a lot of kind of underpinnings, like actually interesting thematic and narrative things going on. And then also something Germaine and I really like touched on, we did an episode on the New York Ripper, and then we did another one more recently on opera, is like there's actually stories going on. Like, because I'm not a narrative first person at all. I don't really give a shit about stories a lot of the time. Like, I'm there for like really interesting formal kind of approaches to things, but there is like genuine like mysteries happening in these movies. And like you're saying, sometimes it's like, it was the maid, she pushed a little kid out a window and then she became insane, and you're like, okay. But other times there's like even New York Ripper, like Germaine and I were genuinely on our toes until like the last 10 minutes of that movie, trying to figure out who the killer was. So I just find that the way it can kind of pair all those things together, I think is just kind of tremendous. And I'm also Italian, so it doesn't hurt as well.
That's perfect. Okay, and Germaine, so what is your I mean, you're more new to the genre, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I am.
So how was your journey into this so far?
It has been a journey. I honestly didn't know much about it until Mazzanti and I started the podcast, and he really kind of brought the knowledge. But the thing that sort of turned me away from it was the like mystery, like murder mystery aspect of it. But I was here for everything else. So I really appreciate the gore. That's a big thing for me. I also really appreciate nudity and like hypersexualized movies. That's also a big thing for me. And I liked, the dubbing. It added like a charming quality, and there's just something about that, like the older era, especially where it's charming, and there's just something about it. So I've had a great time just sort of exploring that catalog more, and then like diving in, doing a deep dive to what this is all about, and getting to really see some cool stuff.
Yeah, and the thing about Giallo, about the gore specifically, is the fact that it's not done. Some of them are, but there are some situations where it's done in such a realistic looking manner. I think that's kind of the way that they approach this is like, we had mentioned earlier, say the Hatchet series, Victor Crowley's going in, he's like slicing people up with chainsaws. Right. There's blood exploding everywhere. It's overly exaggerated, but some of the subtle nuances of the gore in some of these Giallo movies, it looks like, and I think that's what's so compelling about him, is that it looks like, I think that dude just stabbed her in the fucking hand. Like, what is, how did they do that? Like, it is so realistic. And I swear, straight razors are a Giallo murderer's best friend. And I cringe at it because in some of my picks, there are certain kills in there where a straight razor is used, and it looks like, I mean, it's so realistic in certain aspects, like with the straight razor being used, and it's so. I think that's what makes it so compelling too, is the realistic manner that they approach. I mean, there are some that are more have fantasy elements to them, but not a lot of them do. I think a lot of them, the best ones, typically have a straightforward killer with a straightforward motive, and it's pretty grimy. I actually equate Giallo films to like blaxploitation, and my dad was a big fan of 70s blaxploitation films because there wasn't a lot of Mexican made movies out there, so he liked to see the diversity in other films, and blaxploitation was very diverse, and it kind of, I see a lot of Giallo in that because it was very low grade in quality, and the violence was always over the top. There's a lot of sexual encounter in it. There's a lot of nudity and blaxploitation. And it was funny, my dad, I had mentioned his horror tape. He had a tape of like Shaft, Superfly, and Coffee. And man, let me tell you, and Foxy Brown too. Like Pam Grier was my god, my queen. I still love Pam Grier. And I mean, those movies are kind of like an offset of something like Giallo, where it really presents you this world. And so I guess going into that, Mazzanti, so we're going to do our rankings. We somehow narrowed down our top 3 favorite Giallo films. And this also crosses into American Giallo. American Giallo were movies that were created by filmmakers, American-born filmmakers that were inspired by Italian Giallo films. And they count as well because I still consider that the same genre. And what's funny is like we still ended up having the majority of them being Italian Giallo films just because they're the best. So we'll do a typical ranking. So we'll go ahead and start with our number 3 favorite Giallo film. So Mazzanti, number 3, please.
Yes, so my number 3, I had to spread this love around, and I'm thrilled I spread this love to Germaine in particular. It is 1980's Cruising, directed by William Friedkin. I mean, it's Al Pacino in the leather scene in New York. I mean, literally, like, that's the only sentence you need.
Leather daddy, Al Pacino.
See, this movie is like,
fuck yes.
He's leather daddy in this movie. But yeah, it's about Al Pacino's a cop who is going to go undercover in the kind of like S&M BDSM scene in the like leather scene in New York in the 80s, or maybe late 70s. And I'm stunned. Like, I saw this movie in when I was in film school. Actually, a professor, we had a super late night class, so you like always had to bring a shitload of coffee, and the class was like 5 hours long. And he would screen like 2 or 3 movies back to back, and he put Cruising on at like 9 o'clock at night. And shout out Dan Friedlander at Temple if you're still out there doing it. And I was just like, what the fuck is this movie? I was like, is that Al Pacino? Like, what am I watching?
Yeah.
And then learning later, like, that it was William Friedkin. I was stunned because I was like, this man must have, they must have grabbed this guy off the street and made him shoot this movie. It just seems so like illicit and crazy. And it kind of plays with the Giallo formula and it kind of takes some liberties with it, I would say. I think Friedkin is much more interested in the narrative, and it's from a novel. But he takes some liberties in the sense that the kind of masked killer is played with, though in the end, like, you realize they've almost been using like a phantom image of what the masked killer is, because you think you know who it is, and then they kind of twist that around. So it's really interesting because they do have the sunglasses to guard, but there's leather gloves, there's blades, and I mean it's just pure Giallo in the imagery, and it also has that kind of psychosexual thing. It's got kind of all those base elements, those like fundamental elements of Giallo. It's very kind of psychological and very much driven. I think the thing I was starting to notice about all of my picks and Giallo in general is that they're very driven by the gaze and by people's subconscious, like people just being the camera just sort of roves around and ogles at things a lot of the time, and it's perfect for this movie because there's just these scenes of just these nightclubs where there's just all this stuff going on, all these lewd acts happening, and it's just these tableaus. They're just incredible. So I always want more people to see Cruising, and anytime someone brings it up, I'm like, did you just say Cruising? So I wanted to spread the love.
And I'm glad you did, because when you talk about Al Pacino's filmography, this one's never brought up. And
right.
Because I think people are more caught up with the more popular ones. And what's funny is, like, my wife, she had never seen any of his old movies, and this is including The Godfather. So I was like, well, let's watch all of them. So we'll watch every single Al Pacino movie. And when she saw The Godfather, she was like, Al Pacino is so hot. Like, why didn't you start off with that?
He is, though.
And I was like, I didn't really think of it like that, I guess. Yeah, he's good looking.
Yeah.
But I'm still used to, like, old man Pacino. Like, ooh-ah, Pacino.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm like,
Still
I guess,
hot.
he was. Yeah, right. You sound just like, y'all should talk about how much you love Al Pacino after the fact. But she was like, okay, yeah. She's like, let's watch everything. And I thought to myself, oh, man, is she going to love Cruising? Because, he's posing as a gay man, and she loves gays on TV.
Yes.
She's like, oh, they're even hotter. I don't know what it is. We were watching Rocky Horror last night, and she's like, Frankenfurter. Oh my God, Frankenfurter.
Yes.
And
oh my gosh.
That's and I get it. And so I was, when we watched Cruising, she was like, oh my God, this is so good. And
it's the best movie.
The crazy thing about Cruising too, I mean, it brings the term fisticuffs literally into play.
Amen.
And I remember when I first watched it. It was a while back, but I wasn't too young when I saw it. I was probably in college and in film school, and I would pick certain actors where I would do a deep dive on all their work. De Niro, the greats. And so Al Pacino was like, "Oh, Cruising." I'm like, Friedkin, The Exorcist, French Connection. Okay. But like you said, that is not like any of his work that he's ever done. Like, I've never. Stylistically,
it's so out of left field.
And I love the audio sounds in this movie, like the opening scene where he's with he I mean, that's his target is gay men in the S&M club. So he brings in this guy, and the way that he's talking, like this, the chill in his voice, the leather glove, like you could feel the gripping of the leather gloves. And I think the sound effects in this movie, and that was a very controversial movie just because of the violence, and it was just so realistic looking. And I can't remember the woman in the movie. I can't think of the actress off the top of my head, but
Karen Allen.
Oh, Karen Allen, right? Yeah, Indiana Jones.
Yes.
That's right. Okay, so I also loved how their relationship fractures, and how it just, like, there's so many things about that movie that adds an extra layer of complexity to his character. And I'm glad you picked that one, because that's definitely a movie that a lot of people would definitely be squirmish to watch.
Yeah.
Just because, mainstream audiences aren't really anticipating something like this. But before we move on, the most offbeat scene is the one during the interrogation room.
Yes. Okay, I'm so glad you brought it up.
So, Mazzanti, please tell us this crazy scene.
Yeah, they get picked up because Al Pacino's trying to catch this one guy, and they think it might be him, so they go up to his room, and then the cops raid because they don't know if Pacino's going to get killed. So he's still undercover, so they're interrogating both Pacino and this guy. And this giant man with no shirt just walks into the room, bitch slaps Pacino, and then just walks out. And it's so ridiculous. And the movie doesn't have that tone. Like, the movie does not have that comical over-the-top tone for the rest of it. At least I don't take it that way. And so even Pacino is like, who is that?
Yeah.
He says, he's like, who was that man?
Yeah.
Like, they're all just, and then it happens again. They bring him into this room, and it's just, it's ridiculous.
You know, I had to look up something about that. I needed some kind of explanation because he's not just shirtless. He's wearing like a Speedo thong. Like, he's almost hanging out there. And I had to look into it. And what I found, and I could be wrong, was that apparently back in the 70s, the New York Police Department would use crazy interrogation tactics like that to not only coerce testimonies, but just to get people to give a testimony, whether they were actual or factual or fake. And they did stuff like this because who's going to believe that? Who's going to believe? They're like, no. He beat me up. This guy, this 7-foot chaps. Yeah, an assless chaps came in and beat the shit out of me. They're like, okay, tweaker, move on. You know, so it's just like, I had to look into that because I was like, that is just, I mean, the movie's already taking you into this underground, but even that was like, that didn't feel part of the movie, like you said. So, but yeah,
it's so out of left field. It's wild.
I highly recommend Cruising. That is definitely a good watch.
It's so good.
All right, Germaine, so your number 3, please.
My number 3 was A Lizard in a Woman's Skin, directed by Lucio Fulci. So this movie, so I went for kind of the deep dives here, and this one was hard for me to find, and that was kind of like also part of like the appeal of it. But it's so this kind of well-to-do woman, she's the daughter of a British politician, and she's having these dreams. She's having these dreams of her neighbor, and her neighbor is engaged in all of these, like, you know, parties with drugs and sex and everything else, very, very free flowing. And so she starts having these dreams about this woman, these sexual dreams. And then these sexual dreams, of course, these sexual dreams turn into, well, now she's murdering this woman. And of course, lo and behold, neighbor ends up dead. And so, you know, then we have to figure out, like, well, who killed the woman? You know, was it her? And so it goes into this whole thing, but it's very dreamy, very psychedelic. And there's a scene in it where have either of you seen it?
I sadly have not, and it's like a Fulci blind spot for me that I'm embarrassed about.
I actually haven't either, and I'm excited because when we reviewed our list, I was like, oh, this is good. This is new stuff for me to watch.
Oh, man.
So, but you can spoil it. Yeah, of course. Whatever.
Okay, perfect. So the dream sequence in this, so there's a couple of things. So the dream sequences in this are just they're just gorgeous. They are gorgeously shot because it's her and her neighbor, and they're in this room, and it's like soft focus, and there's like wind blowing through their hair, and it's like red carpet, this big red bed, and like the daughter of the politician, she's just in this like big fur coat with nothing else, you know. And so then we've got this like this whole thing. It's just very dreamy, very sexy, very sexual, and so that's just great. And we cut to that a few times, and then but there's this random ass fucking scene in like the middle of the movie where this woman, so she's now staying at this like resort / like mental institution kind of a thing, and she like stumbles into one of the rooms and comes across these 4 dogs. You guys. She comes across these 4 dogs, and it's so fucking random. It literally has nothing to do with anything. But she comes across these 4 dogs that are like basically disemboweled, like up on this thing, and it's the most gruesome, gory, ridiculous shit I have seen. And these, like, their hearts are still pumping, and they're just like chilling, attached to these things. It doesn't really explain why, but I guess like the people on the film, like the cast, the crew, like there was some flack. They had to testify that there wasn't actual like animal cruelty happening.
That's how you know you've done it right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it was so over the top, and it was beautiful. But
Awesome.
yeah, it's great. It's very, very dreamy, you very much don't know, like you think you know what's happening. You have no fucking idea. Like the twist at the end is just, it's really nice. Yeah, it was great.
Is that on Tubi, perhaps? Probably.
No.
It's not? Oh,
It's not. So this one, I actually had to do some digging to find it. It might be on regular YouTube, but I actually had to do like a VPN Italy and go on Italian YouTube to watch it.
Nice.
Okay. Oh, that seems even better.
Exactly.
Like,
I know, it's like part of the appeal. Like you gotta really dig for it to find it. But yeah, it was.
Yeah, I'll log into mine too. That sounds really good. I have to see this dream sequence for sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
that sounds incredible. And also, I think just how hard it is to find speaks to just that these aren't super popular. Like,
Right.
like I was trying to find Man from Deep River the other day, and I had to buy a Blu-ray of it because like Diabolic put out a Blu-ray, but like you can't find it's not anywhere. Like I was looking on with a VPN, I was looking on different like Internet Archives and all Wayback Machine, and you can't find these movies anywhere. Like people just don't give a shit about them.
Yeah.
So
That's
I'm
sad.
glad you're spreading the love.
Okay. Well, yeah, two great picks. So my number 3 pick is actually from director Dario Argento. Now, this is probably the one filmmaker that I think has moved into the mainstream a bit because of his films. Like, they're a little bit more known as far as the genre goes. And
Yep.
while this isn't his most popular one, I think it's one of my preferred films, and it's Phenomena. And this is with a very young Jennifer Connelly. And this is this predates Labyrinth. Like, this movie is,
Wow.
it's like 85, I believe is what it is. And basically, she has this insane X-Men-like ability to communicate with insects and animals. And it's so bizarre. Like, all the things that in a good Giallo film will toss in different subplots and subtext and just all these things, like random occurrences take place and really may or may not have anything to do with the long scheme of the film. And Phenomena is very much like that. Like, the movie starts off, she is an American student who goes to a private academy in Germany, and while she's there, she is sleepwalking and she sees her roommate, her college dorm mate or whatever, getting brutally murdered. So it turns out that sleepwalking was something that she almost like she saw it, like it was a bit of foresight. So she gets sent to this mental institution, where mental institutions are quite the establishing locations for a lot of these movies. And what was really crazy is she's mixing it up with other like older men, like Donald Pleasance is another inmate. And Donald Pleasance, I was thinking, man, how many people know Donald Pleasance outside of anything but Halloween as Dr. Loomis?
Yes.
You know, I guarantee you not a lot. And he is a classically trained actor, the British Theatre Company, and it's just, he's Dr. Loomis forever for a lot of people, probably myself included. And so it becomes the situation where she's being stalked by this murderer, and it's again like a little bit of a mystery as to how this happens. And again, there's stuff with animals in this movie too. And of course, it's one of those movies where there is some barbarism towards animals. And again, they had to say it wasn't real, it's all staged. And there's a scene with a monkey, like a chimpanzee, and he's a good chimpanzee. Like, this isn't some kind of like Planet of the Apes scenario where he's trying to take over. But she communicates with him, and I thought, man, this is, this movie's so funny. And I believe that it is on Prime. I don't know if it's AMC Plus and Shudder, but I think that's actually what it is, because I tend to forget when I recommend movies on Prime that I have Shudder and AMC Plus. So when I log into Prime, I'm just seeing it there, but I'm like, oh wait, I'm sorry, I think it's actually Shudder that it's on. So Phenomena is on there, you can watch it. I believe it's also on Tubi as well. I mean, most of Argento's stuff is on Tubi, and he's like part of this trilogy or trinity of Italian Giallo filmmakers, like with Bava and Fulci. These three guys pretty much encompass the majority of this genre, and to great avail. But yeah, Phenomena, Jennifer Connelly. If you're a fan of her, I would even recommend you watching this movie, because I saw this when I was younger, and of course I had a crush on Jennifer Connelly, just like every normal prepubescent twerp out there. And I felt like I grew along with her, and then Career Opportunities and all these other movies. And it's just like, oh my gosh, even today, like Jennifer Connelly is just amazing. So, and her acting ability was always just there. She just always had that. Yeah. And in this movie, it's showcased at even at an early age, because she's dealing with a lot of stuff. But yeah, so Phenomena is my number 3. So I'll loop back around and do my my number 2. My number 2 is actually a movie. It's an American Giallo film, and it was released in 1980 by director Brian De Palma, and that is Dressed to Kill. Now, Brian De Palma was an American filmmaker who really, really dove into this genre and tried to make it his own. It's kind of odd. Like, I think some people consider like Body Double or Blowout with John Travolta as semi-Giallo inspired films, because there's a lot of, technical aspects like the sound and the mystery aspect. And I think that he's really influenced by the genre. And Dressed to Kill, this one it's just so insane. It has Michael Caine in a way that you may not want to see him in, because he is pretty damn crazy in this movie. I mean, I know that's probably a spoiler to say, because his wife, played by Angie Dickinson, and Angie Dickinson was a porn star back in the day. So it opens up with this like very very gratuitous sex scene, and you're like,
incredible.
I mean, it was like, it's showing like pubic regions in the shower, and then she gets stabbed in the shower, but it was like a nightmare sequence, right? But then I remembered rewatching this like a couple of years ago, and I was like, damn, it was this NC-17, because this is like showing some stuff. Yeah. And it wasn't. It was just, back in the 80s, ours were like, well, this is as far as we can get, so this is what you're gonna get, is a rated R movie. But so Angie Dickinson's character, right off the bat, she's having an affair on her husband, and then she gets murdered while she's in the apartment of the guy she's sleeping with. And then, of course, it's a brutal knife sequence, and again, the blood is kind of exaggerated red. I think that was a thing with De Palma, was like, he really wanted to show red, so he really introduced a lot of the paint red. It's not typical blood, but it's just that reddish paint style of blood, and it's all over the place. Looks great. And then the movie has a great twist ending, and you basically try to figure out who it was that killed her, because Nancy Allen shows up in this from Blowout and Carrie, even RoboCop. Like, Nancy Allen was in a lot of shit in the 80s, and she plays a prostitute who is being stalked by somebody, and you can't really figure out who it is until the very ending. Now, some of these twists, like I said, weren't great, but some of them were. And I think the twist ending to Dressed to Kill is actually one of the better endings for this franchise, because it's just, it's just really good. Last time I checked, it was on Tubi. I don't know if I had to download that through the VPN either, but again, that's one that I think is more appetizing to a mainstream audience. Not that we're trying to play off to mainstream, but we kind of do, because I want more people to experience this franchise, and I think that this one's a little bit more palatable in that sense. And it's definitely shocking. But yeah, that's my number 2 is Dressed to Kill.
It's a great pick. It's a great pick.
Good.
Have y'all seen Dressed to Kill, right?
Oh yeah. I was on a big De Palma kick last year, just like watching a ton of his filmography, and I actually watched that one. My fiance was watching a lot of them with me, and she's not into horror really, but she really enjoyed it too. Yeah. And so I do think it's a great like entry point into Giallo, and it's pretty gnarly, and I mean, De Palma got like lambasted in America for that, and for Body Double, the drill scene in Body Double, and all that stuff, and it's like, you go over to Italy, and they're just like, this is just another Tuesday for us.
That was some weak shit, De Palma. That's all you got.
So I think it's like he was in the wrong landscape at a certain point. He just sort of like gave up on making these movies, because he just was getting just destroyed by critics, and just they really used him as like a fucking whipping post for all the issues that people were having. So it's a shame that his career kind of went where it did, but he's just such an amazing craftsman, and the movie's just so compulsively watchable, and just so well made. I mean, he's right up there with the Italians in terms of the way he's using the camera and the way he's just so expressive and interesting. I think Germaine, you just watched that pretty recently, right?
I did. So you recommended this to me, and I checked it out, and I remember I messaged you, and I was like, what the fuck? This is the opening scene? Are you kidding me? I haven't seen this before. Yeah, it was. Yeah, very, very good. Very good.
It's kind of funny to think that the director of Dress to Kill went on to make the first Mission Impossible movie. It's like, talk about range, De Palma. Like, well done, sir.
Yeah, he's all over the board. He's fantastic.
That's a quality filmmaker, and I guess he doesn't do anything anymore. I don't know. I think he's still with us. I don't want to besmirch him if he's not, but I'm pretty sure he just doesn't make films anymore. But
yeah, he tried to make that movie Domino with Nikolai Coster-Waldau.
Oh, that's
I'm gonna mess up his name.
Yeah.
And that like got I've heard there's some interesting ideas in that movie because you can see like glimpses of De Palma's vision, kind of like, before the other Justice League came out, like you could see little Zack Snyder bits inside of all the Joss Whedon awfulness.
Yeah.
But apparently the studio just totally just destroyed it and just cut it up, and it was he disavowed it, and yeah, it's a shame. It's just
That
like,
is a bummer.
Martin Scorsese's still operating at the level he's operating at, and it's just like De Palma just totally just dropped off. It's a shame.
It's really weird that Tarantino in his filmography has never really done a Giallo based film before. Because if you look at his filmography, because he's a huge fan, like he's gone on record of talking about these movies, and him and Eli Roth have gone back to back about some of these things too. And it's just really bizarre that I know that when he said he was going to make 10 movies, he did want to make one of them a horror movie, and I could have sworn that it would have been very much Giallo influenced because he just loved that kind of genre and blaxploitation. Well, that's why he made Jackie Brown's, because he was a fan of blaxploitation. So
yeah, I know. I am really sad that he's not. I mean, I'm sure the movie critic will be an interesting film, but I am very sad that he hasn't made a Giallo. Meanwhile, you got Eli Roth's making Thanksgiving right now, and it's like that's like pure Giallo inspired.
It's funny.
Such a
I'm
joy.
glad you brought up Thanksgiving, because the Grindhouse trailer for it looks a lot different than the actual movie does. And I get that they kind of had to polish it for Universal Pictures. Like it's filmed in a better quality than what you would anticipate. But I'm just glad that it's still happening, because that's been discussed and begged for ever since Grindhouse came out with the fake trailers. Because it's like, they got Machete, so why can't we get Thanksgiving? Like, what's the 100%. Deal here? So I am just glad that it's happening. And, with him writing and directing, he's definitely going to put the gore in that movie. I am anticipating to be at top level, because that's what he does best.
It's gotta deliver.
Whether or not it's kind of low budgeted or he has money for his shoots, but yeah, I'm glad you brought up Thanksgiving, because that's going to be good. So
yeah, we're both pumped for it.
All right, so Germaine, your number 2 Giallo film, please.
Number 2 is All the Colors of the Dark, directed by Sergio Martino. One of the reviews that I saw of this that I loved was basically, when therapy doesn't work, try Satanism. Which is accurate for the movie.
What a tip.
So essentially we've got this woman, and she's struggling with, she's been in a car accident, so she's had a miscarriage, lost her child, and then she also had like a very traumatic experience when she was young. Her mom got murdered, and so she's struggling with these nightmares. So we've got another kind of like dream-based movie, but she's struggling with these nightmares, and then these nightmares start to like appear in real life. She starts seeing this man with these piercing blue eyes stalking her. And she can't get rid of this. And side note, the opening scene of this movie is fucking wild. It's off the rails. So we've got like this naked pregnant woman up in stirrups, and then we've got like this lady who's kind of like Betty Davis in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Makes no sense. She's just running around. So we've got all that, and we've got this person with the blue eyes, and then we've got a bunch of stabbing. Like, it's an opening dream sequence, again, kind of like the other one, but in a different sort of like avenue. It's just fucking crazy. But so she's struggling with these really intense dreams, and then starting to see this person following her. And so one of her neighbors tells her, "Hey, you're struggling. You've been in therapy. It's not working. Come to Black Mass with me." And, as you should. And so she goes and partakes in this, and to try to help, and things just keep getting worse. They keep getting worse for her. The best way to describe this is like, Italian Rosemary's Baby. So if you like Rosemary's Baby,
100%.
you would really love the vibe of this. It looks incredible, and we've got Edwige. I don't know if that's how you say her name. Edwige Fenwick.
Fennec, yeah.
Fucking
Icon.
phenomenal. Just
Icon.
goddamn, just amazing.
Yeah.
And it's so dreamy. Everything's so gloomy and beautiful. And then we've got all these shots in this like random ass castle with the with the black mass. All this weird shit is
castle,
happening.
yeah.
Yes, exactly. Satan's castle. It's really good. It's great. Italian Rosemary's Baby.
And where is it streaming? Is it another one we're gonna have to dive deep for? Or?
Unfortunately, yes.
Damn it.
This one, no. This one I rented on Vudu. I rented it on Vudu.
Yeah, okay. And Amazon. I think it's you can rent it on Vudu and Amazon.
I couldn't get it on Amazon. I don't know if that's
really?
changed. But when I looked, it wasn't available on Amazon.
Oh, it's one of those. Where it says it's available, and they're like, it's not available right now. You're like, well, why'd you tell me it was?
Yeah.
I hate when that happens, when you search for something and you see the Amazon icon, and then you're like, okay, well, at least I could possibly rent it, and then it's like, oh, this is unavailable.
Yeah,
not here.
Why are you putting it on here?
No, this is good. I like how we have picks that you're gonna have to do some work, because you really earn it the end. Because when you find something, like, I don't like to rent movies anymore, but if I do, I'm not gonna not watch it. I'm going to watch every single second of it. I'm not going to take a break.
That's right.
This actually happened a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if y'all remember Ghost in the Machine from 1993. And Rachel Talalay, who did Tank Girl and Freddy's Dead, directed this just crazy movie. And I was like, oh, it's the 30th anniversary of Ghost in the Machine. Oh my God, I haven't seen that in a long time. So I was looking everywhere through my VPN, through other means that I'm definitely not going to discuss. And so I was like, it's on Amazon. And they don't even have an HD version of this movie. That's how little they think of Ghost in the Machine. I'm like, you know what? I don't give a shit. I'd prefer the SD quality, because it makes me feel like I'm renting it from my video store when I was 10 years old.
That's right.
So
that's right.
I watched it. And I mean, the tech stuff, because it's all about a killer that gets into the internet. And this is 93. So you can imagine. But that's part of its charm. So basically what I was saying, like, I rented it. And you appreciate it more. So it's like when you find these movies. But I'm definitely going to watch. Actually, I'm going to watch. You guys have given me a lot to watch. My next week's recently watched segment's basically just going to be me telling Chris, like, oh, dude, I watched this, this, and this. Like, you've got to see it. It's so good. So
don't you wish you were on the pod?
Yeah, I know, right? Poor guy. You missed it. And so, okay. So what was it called again? I'm gonna make a note of that. What your pick was?
All the Colors of the Dark.
All the Colors of the Dark. Okay, perfect. That's a good title. I like
it's a great title.
The contrast there. So okay, got it. All right, Mazzanti, your number 2.
Yes, my number 2 is 1972's "Don't Torture a Duckling" by Lucio Fulci. I actually just watched this movie semi-recently, and I'm a huge Fulci fan, and I was really, really taken with it. I'd kind of put off watching it because it deals with it's set in a rural town in Italy that is experiencing a series of child killings, and they're trying to figure out who's doing it. So in classic Giallo fashion, there's like a number of characters where there's at least one point in the movie where, you know, there's a shot, it pans over to them and they give a meaningful look and you're like, that motherfucker killed those kids. And then it's always like it's someone else. So it does a really good job of like that mystery formula. And again, it's something Germaine and I talk about is just the reluctance of, especially modern movies, especially contemporary movies in America, not wanting to like hurt children. You know, like I watch Black Phone and I'm like, I'm not scared of this fucking movie because they're not going to hurt this kid. They already killed the other kids, but that's in the past. They're not going to kill this kid. And so this movie kills the kids. I'm just going to spoil it out right now. You know, they're killing kids. It's just Fulci is just like you were talking about earlier. The practical effects that he uses are just tremendous. They're just out of this world. So gnarly, and he uses more restraint with the kids. But there's other killings that happen. There's one sequence in particular with this kind of local in the town that people start believing is going to be the killer. And it's a really just harrowing sequence. And I think it's one of those times where he has a lot of more kind of fantasy movies, you know, like The Beyond and House by the Cemetery that have those kind of those are kind of over the top horror elements. This is so down to earth. And so when you combine kind of the really kind of grueling situations that are happening with his practical effects, it's a really, really harrowing combination. But it still also just has that kind of crazy Italian sheen to things. So there's tons of whip pans and crazy deep zooms and awesome music, and people are having sex. It's still got all the Giallo elements, but it kind of hits a lot harder than some of the other ones that I've seen. I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's great.
Sounds good. You said that's Fulci, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely had a master level of these movies. I haven't seen that movie in a long time. I think I actually saw it on Tubi when I was recommending some to Chris. So I'll probably rewatch that one too. Might as well add it to the damn list. I'm gonna be up all night. My wife's gonna be like, "What are you watching? This is disgusting." And then she's like, "Start it over." I'm like, "No, I'm like in the 7th film on my list now. I can't stop now." But that is a good movie. I haven't seen that one in a long time, but that is a good one. So we're gonna go ahead, Mazzanti. If you want to do your honorable mentions, anything that you would like to shout out, and Germaine, you'll be next, and then me, and then I'll finalize, or I'll give my top pick. That way, it ends on you two, because guests always have to close out our lists.
Of course. I would definitely recommend another Sergio Martino movie that kind of is a nice double feature with All the Colors of the Dark. It's another Edwige Fenech movie called The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward. That's a very interesting movie, very kind of similar psychosexual, dreamlike. It's one of those movies, and I think Martino is really good at this, where you start to just kind of lose objectivity, and you don't know. You're completely caught in her subjectivity, and you just get overwhelmed, and scenes sort of blend into the next one, and you're like, were you just dreaming? Was that, so it really has that quality to it. And I find it to be, Martino, spoilers, is my number one pick, one of his movies, so I find it really good. I had All the Colors on there, so definitely shout out to that. And then, in terms of the classics, I think another good entry point, if after Dress to Kill, if someone wants to venture onto the Italian side of things, I think Bay of Blood is a great place to start, because it has that kind of Friday the 13th-esque formula quality to it, in terms of being by the lake. And, Giallos are kind of split up between the kind of rural Giallo and then the kind of city Giallos. And so I think for us, I feel like it's more familiar when it's that rural setting, because you don't see a ton of like city-based horror in America. But Dress to Kill is, which is great. But I think Bay of Blood is another one. I prefer the alternate title, Twitch of the Death Nerve, I have to say.
That is a good title.
It's an amazing title. And I recently, again, I'm still like catching up on classics, but Deep Red, I watched that really recently. Profondo Rosso, that's a classic, and that's another good one that I think can kind of get people into, because there is a story, there is a character you're following all the way through, and it's not too ridiculous. I think it has a genuine story going on there as well. And I would also shout out Opera as well, which I know, that is just like Argento just doing his thing really well. And then I'm not going to shout out one other one, because I believe it's on Germaine's list. So I'll hold off on my last honorable mention. Oh, I do want to shout out Pieces.
Oh, yes.
Juan Piquer Simone. You have to shout out Pieces. And honestly, it fits the Giallo formula, even though it's a Spanish director making a movie for America. But everyone should watch Pieces, because you don't have to go to Texas for a chainsaw massacre.
Yes.
So I highly recommend Pieces to everyone.
I'm still looking for that puzzle in that movie, by the way. I can't find it anywhere. So that poor little bastard. I was like, he's just trying to have fun. Like, what can you do? Now look what you did.
So good.
That movie's fantastic. I didn't even think of, because there's a lot of those particular type of slashers, like Maniac Cop, and all those. They're very much inspired by that, as far as the realistic gore. Because in Pieces, especially, like some of the kills in that were just so
gnarly,
gruesome, and
good.
It is, yeah. If that's what you're looking for, that's definitely what it will deliver. But yeah, that I haven't seen that movie in a long time. I think I saw that on Peacock too. I think I was going through Peacock and I saw that on there. It was like, Pieces is on Peacock. The names just kind of work somehow too, but I never would have expected a movie like that to be on this just brand new streamer. And good for it, but yeah, that's a good one. All right, so Germaine, do you have any honorable mentions?
I do. So definitely, I agree. Bay of Blood is definitely a great entry point. It's got a lot of sort of Friday the 13th, kind of vibes there. It's a very good jumping off point. Also Tenebrae
Oh yeah.
The Argento film, very
Yes.
very good. Lots of nice gore. Lots of really just pretty gore. I don't know if that's if I mean I don't know
No,
if I can,
the
if
red,
that's-
like the
but
pretty
yeah,
red.
up
That's
against
very
the stark
stylistic.
white. Like it's
Yeah.
very beautiful. And then Blood and Black Lace was another really good one.
Mm-hmm.
Not particularly gory, but just fucking beautiful. The lighting, the vibes, if you will, of that, just absolutely gorgeous. So those would be my
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of people consider that to be like one of the first Giallos, kind of like a prototypical Giallo, and like that's like kind of Bava kind of paving the way for other people to come in and kind of start working in that space. And also, okay, I do have to say it's not Giallo, but if people are in the Italian sphere, go watch House by the Cemetery, go watch The Beyond, go watch City of the Living Dead. I mean, the Gates of Hell trilogy from Fulci is like just one after the next.
Beyond
just
is good.
crazy as hell,
Yeah.
and just so good.
Awesome. Yeah, the Tenebrae, that's a really good one. That kind of works in his little trilogy. I had Phenomena, and then of course Suspiria. I think Suspiria is probably, if you're looking at all these movies all together, that's the one that, I mean, it even got the Luca I can't pronounce his name.
I know I can't either.
Luca
Guadagnino or something. Just do this while you're talking.
But the director of Call Me by Your Name,
That's right.
He did the remake, which I actually thought was pretty good.
Me
I
too.
thought it was
I
really
liked
well
it too.
done.
Me too.
Dakota Johnson's a bit underrated in some of these performances because she was really good in that
Yeah.
movie.
She kills it in that
And,
movie. Yeah, and she's dancing. There's so much more dancing in the remake than in the original, and like it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like it's like what is that movie? Climax by Gaspar
Gaspar
Noé.
Noé?
Like,
Oh shit!
bringing in those like extended dance sequences
Yeah.
and then having the new Suspiria is like it's a good movie.
Man, and,
Yeah.
and so like that with Argento. I wanted to give a shout out to my friend Amy Hartzog who loves Giallo. I even told her, I was like, we're doing a Giallo movie. She's like, oh my gosh. And she mentioned Deep Red as one of her favorites. And at first I was like, that's the clairvoyant, right? Where she sees a murder at the beginning. I had seen it before, but it's been a really long time. And then, yeah, that was a good movie. Cause then I can't remember if it was like a professor, somebody that was in, cause she gets killed. Like you think she's going to be the hero. And then in typical Giallo fashion, just flips like right off the bat. You're like, oh, well, she's definitely not the hero. But yeah, Deep Red's really good. Blood Rage, I don't know if that's considered, but I've always loved that one. Bay of Blood, that's a really good movie. I haven't seen that in a long time. But let's see. I think, oh, you know what? There was this one that came out in 2014, which is odd because it's that's a lot newer, but what it is, it's called The Editor. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of that before, but what The Editor is, it's like intentionally Giallo inspired. Like it's about this guy who's making a movie and he's making a Giallo film specifically for it. And it's shot in that way. They have the boom mics kind of popping in the top. It's not comical by any means, but what it's kind of like with Black Dynamite did for blaxploitation flicks. This one is doing for Giallo films. So, like I said, it came out in 2014. It's called The Editor, and it's really, really good because there's also like
I've never heard of
a murder on the loose, of course, and it's terrorizing his film set. And I highly recommend you watch that because it plays into the genre intentionally. So, and anytime something like that happens when you're making a farce or a spoof, it could come off kind of lazy and dumb. But the filmmakers love the genre, as you can tell watching it. So I highly recommend The Editor. That one was really good.
That I thought you were there's a movie very similar to that I watched before I'd honestly like seen many Giallos that came out in 2012 by Peter Strickland. He's like kind of getting, he's making waves in the kind of genre space, but he made a movie with Toby Jones called what is the name? I have to Barbarian Sound Studio. Have you guys heard of that movie?
Haven't.
And it's like it's a similar concept to what you just said, but it's like this guy is like a Foley artist, and he's like he's working in a sound booth all the time, and they're making a Giallo, so he's having to like smash watermelons and stuff, and he's watching this. He's just having to watch these horror scenes over and over again. There's people in the sound booths having to yell over and over again, but then like weird shit starts happening in this studio space.
What is that called again? I'm gonna add that.
It's called Barbarian Sound Studio, so it's BERBERIAN.
Oh, you said Toby
Sound
Jones
Studio?
too, right? He was the
Yeah. Yeah, Toby Jones, and it's directed by Peter Strickland. It's just an interesting film. Honestly, I saw it in 2012, so I haven't, it's been like a decade, so I can't like wholeheartedly recommend it, but I remember thinking it was an interesting like entry point into like a horror. I hadn't seen that before. It's like a sound engineer. I had, then Blowout, exists, but other than that.
Okay, well that sounds good. I'm going to go ahead and start my number ones, and we'll end with you, Mazzanti. So my number one is a movie that came out in 1987, and the director is Michel Soavi. So Michel, is very, very, wonderful name for a filmmaker, and he released this movie called Stage Fright. Now, Stage Fright, it really appealed to the theater kid in me because I love theater. I've done many plays. So when I was in college as a theater major, I was just kind of looking out for horror like I always do. And I said, Stage Fright, that sounds interesting. And I was like, oh, it's Italian Giallo. So basically with Stage Fright, it's about a troupe of actors doing a play. And of course, there's a murderer running around the stage, killing people. And it's so good. And everything about it is so over the top. And the music, the score in this movie is just purely delightful. And I guess it's something for Deep Red. Like the music in Deep Red is really good too. I should have mentioned that. But like the score to Stage Fright is so much better than it actually should be. But then not only is the killer running around killing the cast and crew of this play, he or she is doing it with this giant owl mask. So that is the iconic look for this killer. And that's actually kind of what inspired those like late run of 90s slashers where, with Scream, Urban Legend, I Know What You Did. They all had to have this like look, this gimmick. And even like Happy Death Day with the baby head, I think that's just like Stage Fright. I guess it's a costume on the set. Someone picked it up. They start wearing this owl hat or owl mask, and they're killing people in brutal fashion. Like it starts off a little weird. Like you don't know if it's the play. It's almost like a play within the play, so you don't know. It's a nice little twist. And then of course the final reveal happens, and I would say that it is a better twist than most of them are. And I love this movie because again, it plays on my love for theater and movies and Italian Giallo, and all just kind of comes to a head. And I believe Stage Fright, I want to say it's on Prime, but it may be on Shudder. So I know it's on one of those two, and I know for sure it's on Tubi. So you can always watch Stage Fright. I didn't watch the remake, the 2014 one with Minnie Driver. It looked way different. I was like, oh God, this looks so mainstream, and I don't usually care about that kind of stuff. And I guess maybe I did watch it. I just don't remember really enjoying it. It was so far from what the original was that I just didn't care for it. But I would just stick to the original. So yeah, Stage Fright is my number one. Highly recommend. Have either of you seen Stage Fright?
No.
I'm startled that I have not. That's like a huge blind spot for me. Because I've seen the 2014 one. I just I was just like an idiot and was like, oh, watch the new one.
Well, no, it's good it's good that you watch the new one, because then when you watch the old one, you're going to be like, oh yeah, this is some good shit. This is so much better. So, but yeah, like I said, Amazon Prime, Tubi, but I love Stage Fright. Germaine, did you see Stage Fright by any chance?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you did?
Seen
Okay,
it.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I can't wait to see what you guys think of that one, because
I'm definitely going to watch that
for sure.
So, all right, Germaine, you're number one, please.
Okay, my number one. I'm actually going to circle back around to some Fulci.
Yes.
And this is going to be a little bit of retribution for our podcast, where this particular movie, we reviewed it. It didn't make it in the tub, and I've regretted it ever since, but I can't go back. But my number one is The New York Ripper. And it's fantastic. So we've got this person killing a bunch of women, but quacks like a duck. We've got quacks like a duck. We've got great gore. We've got an incredible eyeball slash. We've got a nipple slash. There's a scene early on with an iconic line, which I will never forget, where they say that the killer, I quote, stuck it up her joy trail and slit her wide open.
Oh my.
which is one of the best things I have heard. But yeah, it's incredible. It's ridiculous. It doesn't take itself too seriously. Again, great effects, great gore. And I really was kind of on the edge of my seat with this whole thing. I know that's kind of the thing with Giallo is that you don't know who the killer is, and we go back and forth between, is it this person, is it this person? But this really does a great job of just sort of keeping you on the edge of your seat. You don't know what's happening. You think you know, you don't know. And it's phenomenal. It's a great movie. Highly recommend.
And it's got an amazing score.
Ooh,
an
fantastic.
amazing score. I mean, just a knee-slapping score. And it's not available to stream, which it drives me insane.
Is it not?
But no.
Did they take it down? It was on Amazon.
It's on YouTube, but you can't, I don't think you can get it, you can't download it, I don't think.
Oh.
And same with the zombie score, Fulci Zombie. The score's not on
Oh, the
Spotify.
score, not the movie. Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The movie is available, but the score itself, which I'm always spinning Cannibal Ferox, just 24/7. But I was very, very sad that tonight. But it's New York Ripper is just it's perfect.
And for listeners that haven't seen the live stream, Mazzanti is actually wearing a New York Ripper cap. So I was surprised that Germaine picked it when you were wearing the hat. I like that twist.
Yeah.
That's right. But we had our own little Giallo twist in here.
I should have worn my horror hat. I just stick with my Wayne's World one, which is definitely not a Giallo film. But no, but that's awesome. That the New York Ripper, that's a classic. Definitely seen that one, but I'm just gonna probably go back and just rewatch a lot of these just because I haven't seen them in a long time. And I should have added that line into my wedding vows now that I'm thinking about it.
It is. It's a pretty romantic line.
It's beautiful. I think we should just get remarried just so I can say that in front of our friends and family. It's just such a delight. No, but that's good shit. That's a solid choice. So, all right, Mazzanti. So, Indecent Style, please.
Yes, I'm going to stay on the Sex Maniac train from
Yes.
New York Ripper. My number one pick is 1973's Torso, which is by Sergio Martino as well. I just think this movie's... I adore this movie. I think it's perfect. It has the greatest score of all time, and that is available to stream. So you can get that on Spotify, and it is fantastic. And I just think it's a... just a deceptively, like all Giallos, if you're not, if you haven't seen a lot and you're not kind of looking for it, it's a deceptively well-made movie with a lot going on, but it is also just a ridiculous sex-filled, violence-filled movie. But I think it does a great job of, so I've seen it maybe 3 times now, and I hadn't watched it for maybe a year or two. I still was like, oh, wow, they show you who the killer is really early. And I was fucking wrong. It's so ridiculous how good they are at doing this. You genuinely have a mystery element to it that's going on of who the killer is. And there's this whole thing with the scarf, this red scarf that has 2 different patterns on it. And you think it's the one, and it's the inverted pattern. And it's just got a really interesting kind of narrative push to it. And the camera is just roaming all over the place, just so id driven, so subconscious, just ogling everyone, and it manages to be crass but also be smart. There's this amazing part where there's these townspeople that are continually ogling these girls who go on vacation. So it's set in Perugia, and then these women, they want to take a break. There's been a killing at their school. They want to go up to this this kind of getaway, this villa, and just get away from things. And the killers follow them there. So when they're in this town, there's all these country folk ogling at them, and these guys are always in the town at night talking about how amazing they are. But then they use that motif of these guys talking to, at one moment, they talk about how another girl showed up, and this is when the killer's already been to the house and thinks he knows who's there. And the killer hears them talking about these women, and that's what propels him to go back to the house. So they managed to put this really crass, just locker room talk into a narrative context and have it mean something. And I think it's just so deceptively clever.
Good writing.
And the gore is fantastic. I mean, he
It's
smushes
nice.
a dude's head with a car, and there's just crazy stuff with blades, and Yeah, it kind of it has this kind of whimsical quality to it, and is very kind of over the top. But then in the last 30 or so minutes, the floor kind of drops out from the movie, and it just gets really, really tense and really kind of painstaking. You're just following this one character through just a bunch of just a sequence of like extreme tension. So yeah, I think it's just a masterclass in filmmaking, and it's got kind of all the Giallo staples that people want to see. So I was like, if someone wants to like gift wrap a Giallo and just be like, what is all the genre has to offer? Like Torso is hands down the movie that I would hand them. So it's perfect.
That's the red and black checkered scarf, right? That he puts on.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I remember. Yeah,
Yep,
and
yep.
you did say Martino, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's a good one. I haven't seen that one in a long time either. I think
It's
that is
fantastic.
on Tubi. Now that I was kind of scrolling through them earlier, I believe it's on Tubi.
I believe it is. It's also on. Yes, it is on Tubi, and it's also on Arrow Video Player, which is
Oh.
like shout out to like #1 streaming service,
Yeah.
other than like I guess like Criterion Channel is like
Sure.
Arrow's Video Player just has some shit on there that like no one else has got, and they've got a good Giallo collection, including that one.
Nice
But
pull.
yeah, I am actively trying to convince my fiance that our honeymoon should be just we go to all the locations in Torso. That is like all I. It's just all I want from our honeymoon.
Damn, that's beautiful. You're gonna make me cry on my own podcast, man.
Here's where the sex maniac kills them in the cab. You know,
Are you ready to go now?
I'll run into you renewing your vows with the New York Ripper quote while I'm on the
Yeah,
the Torso tour.
that's great because I might want to borrow your hat when I do so. I can't wait. This is gonna be fantastic. Well, this has been great. I'm glad that both of you were able to join me on this podcast. And
Yeah.
again, speaking for Chris, he's gonna hate that he misses this when he hears it. I was like, just don't even listen to it, man, because you're gonna be so bummed out after the fact, and you'll probably be very scared. He's like, man, that's gonna give me nightmares. I can't wait to have like a Christmas themed episode in December. I was like, I don't know. I might pick like Christmas slashers or something.
Yes.
That's right.
But
That's right.
because there's plenty of those too. Maybe we can have you all back on in Christmas time
Yeah.
and talk about that. But
love that. I love that.
so before I sign us off, is there anything? Actually, yes. Please share your socials and anything else that y'all want to share. Please do so.
Sure, yeah. You can follow us like as Dead Body Bathtub. We're on Letterboxd, Instagram. I think Jermaine, are we on TikTok?
Yes.
As Dead Bod Pod or just Dead Body Bathtub. So find us on there. I'm on Letterboxd at Ridley Scotch. I'm
That's
on.
good.
I'm on Goodreads. If you want to know what I'm reading, you can find me on Goodreads. Mike Mazzanti on there. If you can spell my last name. And then I'm on Instagram at Lionsgate Pictures. So I am not the film company, but you can follow me anyway and look at pictures of my cat. And then Germaine, and we should shout out for a limited time, you can go on Pallbearer Press, which is a great horror merch shop, and you can use the code DEADBOD10 at checkout, and so you can do like a 10% off your thing. So that's running through November. So highly recommend it. This beautiful New York Ripper hat is from there. I have like 30 Pallbearer Press t-shirts. I just used the code myself. It was just an excuse. I was like 10% off, so I just used the code just nonstop myself. I don't think anyone else has used it, but I certainly have gotten my money's worth out of it.
I'm glad you shared that. I was actually wondering where you got that hat because that's pretty choice.
Yeah, Pallbearer Press.
Pallbearer
They've
Press.
got the stuff.
Okay.
Yes.
right.
So I am on Instagram and Letterboxd and recently Goodreads.
Yes.
And I am just Germaine Shock.
Jermaine
She
Shock.
keeps it nice and simple.
That's it.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I get all long-winded about it. That's short and sweet. That sounds good. Okay, so yeah, you can follow all of your socials. Thank you for sharing. We'll actually attach them at the end of the episode, and when we post it,
Awesome.
we'll put whatever y'all want on there. And of course, you can find the Screen Addicts on all of the podcasting platforms. You can go to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X. We're all at Screen, I guess, _Addicts. This is where Chris really thrives. He's the market. I suck at it. I'm like, you know what? If you can't use Google to find us, that's your damn problem.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if you're already subscribed, then you know what you're getting yourself into. And also, I would like to share that after listening to some of the gruesome details, most people might want to go over to betterhelp.com and You could actually
Yes.
use our promo code Screen Addicts, one word, and put it in for betterhelp.com/Screen Addicts and get 10% off your first month. I'm sure someone like Chris could probably use it after listening to it. But you know,
Yes, Chris, please do.
We're good with horror. It doesn't faze us. I'm actually the opposite. I took a note of everything that I hadn't seen, and I'm going to go immediately watch it. I don't shy from it, and I'm exactly why I wanted you to come on and talk about all this stuff with us. And I again really appreciate it. So everybody follow them. You know, you can follow Screen Addicts Podcast. Go to Facebook, the Screen Addicts Fanatics. That's where we interact with a lot of our listeners. You can submit questions and post just whatever, you know, memes, trailers. That's kind of where a lot of our stuff gets dropped anyway. And I think that's probably going to do it. Like I said, Chris will be back next week, and he will have a special guest, and we're going to be talking about our favorite special makeup effects in movies. So yes, and his guest actually works in the business as an FX artist. So this is going to be pretty exciting. And again, another ranking. And but yeah, so again, thank you, Mazzanti. Thank you, Germaine. And
thank you.
Adios, amigos.
Thank you so much for having us. I appreciate it.